Welcome to another edition of Fight News Now Extra. My name is John Pollock, and we are coming off a stacked weekend of fights, and John Ramdeen, Robin Black, and I are here to discuss the highlights with you as the UFC presented a fight night card from Brazil featuring a big light heavyweight rematch, and they also confirmed a main event for a Brazilian card coming up later this year. Dan Henderson came back from a 2-round deficit to blast through Mauricio Shogun at the 131 mark of the third round on Sunday night in Natal, Brazil. Henderson connected with a shot that would break the nose of the former light heavyweight champion and also net him $100,000 in bonuses with fight of the night and a performance of the night bonus. The win snaps a 3-fight losing skid for Henderson and is his first victory since the first Shogun fight back in November 2011 at UFC 139. CB Dollaway was one of 9 underdogs coming through on the card as he stopped Cesar Ferreira with a TKO finish at 39 seconds of the opening round. Dollaway put the tough Brazil winner on his back with a left hook and aggressively finished the fight on top, and Dollaway has now won 3 of his last 4. Despite a lengthy wait period, the May 31st Tough Brazil finale main event is confirmed, with Vanderlei Silva signing a contract to fight Chael Sonnen on that date. It was confirmed to MMAJunkie.com by UFC executive Grace Torino that the contract is signed and the finale will take place in Sao Paulo, Brazil at the end of the season in May. And I'm here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. No time for pleasantries. So much to discuss from this past weekend. Let's start off in Brazil. Dan Henderson, a must-win scenario, I feel. Defeating Mauricio Shogun and really pulling this victory out. I had him down 2 rounds, but here Dan Henderson is saying, hey, I'm going to go through this 6-fight contract, and at 43, very impressive win here, breaking Shogun's nose.
Yeah, it was impressive only because he ended up catching Shogun and showing his resolve. Dan Henderson, I think one of the toughest fighters in the history of mixed martial arts, is definitely going to go down as one of the top 5 greatest Americans. Randy Couture, John Jones, BJ Penn, and I'm sure somebody else is on that list. But the fact that Dan Henderson was able to seize that opportunity, throw that right hand and knock Shogun out, and then follow him to the ground and smash apart his nose, man. Especially when you look at that first round, it could have easily been a 10-8 or 10-7 round.
Did this not almost, though, feel to you like watching Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira pull that win out from Brendan Schaub, where the part of you is like, this is a great end to a very storied career? I mean, let's not mince words here. Dan Henderson looked very slow in this fight, very difficult going for those takedowns. I mean, in a perfect world to me, this is Dan Henderson saying, you know, I'm going out here. But we know that's not going to happen here with the guy.
I agree. I mean, if you're writing a storybook or you're making a movie or you're trying to tell somebody's legacy, that's the best way to end. But Dan makes that call, and Dan doesn't want to make that call. He wants to go, and he wants a different end, either with presumably guys start to lose as they get older. But you know, if he can pull them out like that, the thing is, he is slower, and he hasn't necessarily added a million new things. He adds a few small things. That little right hand on the exit off the fake takedown, that was a little wrinkle to Dan's right hand setup. And if this old man can keep finding interesting ways to land a right hand on the chin of somebody else, or in this case, smash somebody's proboscis like that, that's a moral word, by the way, then, you know, he can keep fighting.
I think it should be the responsibility of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and Dan Henderson to, you know, accept fights and create fights that make sense from a fan standpoint and from Dan's standpoint. Like a fight with Little Nogueira, a rematch, I think that makes sense. A fight with John Jones, I don't know if it necessarily does make sense. However, a fight with Chael Sonnen, I think everybody would tune into that.
Yeah, good times. And the thing with this era of fighter, being buddies and fighting is no problem at all.
Especially for Chael Sonnen.
Exactly. And, you know, the way that him and Shogun kind of engaged in that fight, there was a little low blow. He's like, oh, sorry, dude. Yeah, okay, cool. And then proceeded to go smash. There's this element to these older guys. They don't mind who they fight. They don't mind fighting each other. And there's something beautiful. I like the Nogueira fight as a rematch. Any of these kind of that era guys, you prefer to see that than some young killer come in here and beat these older guys.
However, you put Dan Henderson up against Ryan Bader, and I think you've got a very competitive fight there.
Yeah,
one of the big discrepancies throughout this card was a number of point deductions on this card. And I've discussed in the past the fact that, you know, what is the point of having these rules here if it's just going to be constant warning after constant warning? But in the case of the Norman Park fight, we had a point deduction that ultimately pretty much cost this guy the fight. We got a majority draw here. When it comes to short grabbing, for instance, are you in favor of just a zero tolerance policy that if there's an infraction of the rules, you lose a point, because that's going to be the only way that some of these guys get the message that, hey, I can't grab the fence, I can't grab the shorts, and a low blow is going to be penalized.
Well, I've had the chance to talk to Big John McCarthy in the past, and he says he goes over all of this stuff with the guys in the back room. He tells them what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and that he doesn't have to give any type of warnings because the fighters know the rules and the regulations before they step inside of the cage, and it's at the discretion of the official to either issue a warning or not.
Yeah, I really don't care which way it goes as long as it's the same for everybody. I mean,
consistency. Yeah, I think that's what everyone wants.
Yeah, and John's feeling is that there's that human element to reffing, and if you kind of are falling and you grab the fence, sometimes that was an instinct, but we got to train that instinct out of you. You can't do it in training, and if you start penalizing from day one everybody, it will stop.
Quickly, Will Chope, he was released by the UFC over the weekend when news came out about a bad conduct discharge he received back in 2009. This was not known by the UFC at the time, so they canceled the fight, did give him his show money. Do you agree with this release, the fact that the UFC is saying we don't want to employ people with this kind of a background, or do you come from the sense that the guy did serve his time and should he have a clean slate?
It's a very difficult situation because, number one, the UFC brought him in the first place. They should do their due diligence and look at the backgrounds of all of these fighters. But again, this
is a tough one. It's even a tough one to kind of think out loud about, because when some people harm women or children, it just really kind of makes you feel gross. But do you just trust that feeling, or do you look at it analytically? I don't know, man. What do you say?
Very philosophical question for everybody here at the desk. Also, Bellator, I thought a very solid card on Friday night later in the week. Maybe we can talk about some of their award-winning video packages. But more Fight News Now Extra is coming up.